Let's make a puppet show. I'm Darcy Johnson. This is my puppet journal. Okay, I talked about the show idea, and now I'm going to go into the puppets. I'm already grabbing for this. I just really want to show it to you. So this is the body of XP-2. This is XP-2's head. His eye fell off. It's in there somewhere. His head is a Clamato bottle that I cut out the top, and that is an old kitchen timer from the 1950s that I found at a thrift store. I actually bought it for the face, and I thought maybe I'd mount the face here or something. And then when I was taking it apart, I really liked the gear work, so I made that his brain of sorts. It looked like a almost like a light bulb when you hold it up like this. And the idea is that I want to paint it silver over this ribbed bottom part, and then have some LED lights in here to make him glow a bit in different colors, maybe with his different moods. That's an advanced thing. I don't know if I'll do that. His mouth, I have it as taped now. That's just the size and basics of what I want, but really what I want is a metal plate, or a plate of any kind, that looks like this, and I want it on a pin. And then I want to come up here with a hose, an air hose, and I want to blow on it when he talks so that it'll spin. So on this side he'll have all his teeth, and on the back side I'll have just his front teeth. So as it spins, it'll look like he's talking. His ears are disposable shot cups. His eyes are the little tags that hold bread bags together. When you twist up a bread bag and you put a plastic clip on it, that's what they are, and I cut them, and then I put black tape behind for his eye. I spent about half a day sticking them on sideways, inways, big loops, little loops, and I even added a little bit of black pen just to open up his eye a bit. The fact that his eye fell off illustrates the number one issue I had in starting XP-2. I looked at all sorts of plastic bodies. You know, they've got rounded edges, and some of them have texture, and different juice bottles, milk containers, and I started playing with them, and I absolutely loved the look of them. Most of these plastic food containers hold no adhesive. No adhesive. None. I tried epoxy. I tried construction adhesives. Everything you can imagine. I didn't buy fancy plastic adhesive because I borrowed a fancy plastic adhesive for his ears, I guess you would call them. And they still popped off, and they melted the heck out of the bottom of the shot glass. So I had to use thumbtacks to keep them on. Over here I've got his arms and hands. I spent about a week and a little bit constructing him at the workshop at the Belfry Theatre in Victoria. They let me borrow a little corner of the workshop for a case of beer. So I want to give a shout out to them. So I've got a shipping box, and I reinforced the outside with a high quality crafting cardboard. And you can see I did 2 layers there. And I used a really good construction adhesive. That just made it easier to drill, so it'll take, bolts, and I don't have to worry too much about washers, and I could drill his arm, shoulder in here, drilled that out with a drill, and it's glued this part in, and it really holds well. So rather than make a box from scratch, I thought it would just be simpler to just get an existing box and then just cut pieces and reinforce the walls. And then just dress up the sides. So these are more of those black tacks that were in those ears. And I just used them to look like rivets, and then I found this really funky vinyl that has a nice texture to it. It's like a sealer for windows or something to cover the seam at the top. And then I just found these really neat ties, cardboard ties. I don't even know what they're for, but it just makes it look nice and textured. That's his head. Here are his arms. Because I had the absolute luxury of a shop, I mean, I made these hands in, I don't know, half an hour. Just get a jigsaw, sketched out the wood, you know, cut it out, and then I used some putty to cover up the plywood seams. It's just plywood. And then it's a full scene shop for a theater, so there's just all sorts of little bits. So I found these chair ends, and I just screwed them in there, and it just gives me flexibility to just cap it on there. Now his arms, I wanted it to look like a braided metal cable, like a strong cable that you'd find on a bridge. I looked at all sorts of different hoses, actual cable, and I was looking at real tins and metal boxes for his body too. But the weight just adds up. So paint makes everything look like metal. So I just got the thickest rope I could, and then I shoved a coat hanger down the center. I just efforted that coat hanger in there, jammed it all the way through. Sometimes I would twist it the other way to open up the braid a bit to get the coat hanger down the center. And then I can bend his arm however I want. These are electrical housings. I don't know what you actually call them. So when you loosen this, it comes off, and the inside is like this. So when you tighten it, the inside kind of pinches. So you can screw this down, shove the rope in there, screw this down, and it clamped it shut. And that wasn't enough for me. I had to use construction adhesive. You can see get the light in there. You can see the construction adhesive holding it in there. And then I put the other part that threads on here, and I cut the appropriate hole in the side of his body, and I glued it in so that I have a shoulder. And you just put a little bit of mineral oil or something in there, and it turns like nothing else. Very little resistance, and very, very strong. So that's his arm. That's his inside. It took me a while to piece this all together, but basically it works like this. I've got a spring mounted onto a dowel, and then a rope mounted on the other side of the dowel, and it goes through a piece of wood. Now this wood just friction jams into the back of that electrical conduit, and the spring is mounted onto that bolt there. So that's what keeps it anchored to the wall. And the ropes go for each arm down the bottom via a hole there. And I set up 2 pulleys, and there's one pulley to pull the rope back, and then another pulley to take the string or rope down the hole. And then you just pull the rope down here, yoink, yoink, and he waves hello. So his arms have just a little bit of momentum. It was a lot of fun putting it together. I had very romantic notions of ropes and pulleys. I liked the look of it. I liked how it looks like a rope and pulley. kind of the idea with having his aesthetic of like a braided cable. I spent a long time thinking about attaching a strong, clear fishing line through here so that I could articulate his arm down as well as up. But I abandoned that for now. It just was getting the fishing line threaded through here and then down that control, and then imagining how I would control both functions of the arms on top of all the other functions that I want with him. It just proved too much. So I just have his arm going up and down. Now I was running out of time in the shop and I needed a good base for him. So I added this rather large wood. I thought it would be good to just be able to mount different pieces for the pulleys, like different braces for the pulleys, and also to mount other things if I wanted other controls. So I just thought it'd be a good base. It's quite heavy. And also to receive his base, which is right here. I cut a hole a certain width, and then you can see how it continues at a smaller hole. So I have a piece of tubing that's just as big as this, and then that part of the wood stops it. And I would have him turn by putting a cap, the proper cap on it, and then attaching a dowel to the center, which would also return through the middle. This dowel going through the middle, and those strings. And the dowel would come up attached to the bottom of his head, and I could twist it and turn his head. And I had this attached, and I had this base, and I had the strings going down the middle, and everything worked. He's quite heavy, so I would have that white base pipe where all the mechanisms are going down the center, and I was going to mount it on a hockey shin pad. So I would drill a base, and the white pole, the white pipe would come down and mount in here, and then I could mount the puppet on my leg. So I wouldn't have to take any weight. And I'd put my foot on a dolly, piece of wood with some casters on it, and then I could wheel him around the puppet theater. And he would bounce and jerk with those wheels, so he would look like he was rolling on wheels. It would have a very practical type of movement, a very unique type of movement. I bought these brand new. They were, how much were they? They were $40, I think, brand new. I could have saved $25 and bought them used. Oh, if you've ever dealt with used hockey equipment, my gosh, stinky business. So I paid the extra money, and I got some new hockey pads, which I'm gonna mount a puppet on. The dowel was gonna come out the bottom, and the ropes would come out holes on either side. And I would mount it all into my hockey pad. You know, an XP-2 would be up there mounted. And I would pull the strings and maybe cut a slot in here and put a pin in the dowel, and I could turn his head. It wouldn't give me much range of motion. My big concern with this design so far is after an hour of performing, I would get tendonitis. Like I've been a cashier before, and I know that even just this, you know, is just murder on your hands. So motors and controllers. This is a line of, here's a step motor and a circuit board. So I'm going to give up my romantic notion